A composite figure, also known as a compound figure, is a figure that is composed of two or more other shapes. When we're finding the area of a composite figure, we can decompose each of the larger figures into smaller shapes. Then we can find the area of each of those shapes, and once we have those, we can add all of those together to find the total area of the composite figure. When you look at this shape on your screen, it looks like a strange figure, but this is a composite figure. I noticed that I could break this shape into two smaller shapes by placing a line right here. When I do that, I see that I've broken this into two rectangles, a rectangle down here and a rectangle up here. Now, all I have to do next is find the area of each of these rectangles. I know that when I'm finding the area of a rectangle, the formula that I would use is area equals base times height. So let's start with this rectangle on top. I see that this has a base of 7. So to find its area, I would multiply it 7 times the height. But I notice that I don't have a height. Well, I can use what I have for the rest of my figure to determine the height. I know that this whole length from here to here is 9 inches. But I also know that the length from here to here is 5 inches. So that means that from here to here is also 5 inches. If I know that this whole length is 9, but this part of it is 5, to figure out what I'm left with right here, I can do 9 minus 5 to get 4 inches. So I know that the height of this rectangle is 4 inches. Now all I have to do is multiply 7 times 4 to get an area of 28 inches squared. So I know that this rectangle has an area of 28 square inches. Now I need to find the area of this rectangle. Well, for this one, I know that this height is 5, but I don't know the measure of the base. The base is this measurement right here or right here. Well, if I look at this, I know that my distance from here to here is 7. So the distance from here all the way to the end is also 7. But I know that this distance is already 4. So to figure out what I have left here, I would do 7 minus 4 to get a base of 3 inches. So to find my area, I can take a base of 3 and multiply by a height of 5 to get an area of 15 square inches. So now I know that this rectangle has an area of 28 and this rectangle has an area of 15. To find the area of the total figure, I would add those together. So I would add 28 plus 15, and I would get an area of 43 inches squared. Now for this figure, I notice that I have a rectangle and a right triangle. So if I start with my rectangle, I know that to find the area of a rectangle, I'm going to multiply base times height. Well, my rectangle has a base that goes from here to here, which has a measure of 6, and then a height that goes from here to here, which has a measure of 5. So my area is 6 times 5, which is 30. So this rectangle has an area of 30 centimeters squared. Now I need to find the area of my triangle. I know that to find the area of a triangle, I'm using the formula area equals 1/2 base times height. Well, when I look at this triangle, I need to know the height, which is right here, and that's going to be equal to this because it's the same as this rectangle. So 5 is going to be the same measurement right here. But I need to know the base, and it does not give me that information. What I do know is that the distance from here all the way to here is 14. And I also know that the distance from here to right here is only 6. So to figure out what is left, I would subtract 6 from 14, and now I know that the base has a measure of 8 centimeters. So I can plug this into my formula, and I'm going to multiply 1/2 times my base of 8 times my height of 5. When I do 1/2 times 8, I get 4, and then I multiply 4 times 5, and I get an area of 20 centimeters squared. So I know that the rectangle has an area of 30, the triangle has an area of 20, and to find the total area of the figure, I am going to add those together, and now I know that this has an area of 50 square centimeters. For this composite figure, I noticed that I can take this and I can break it into a rectangle and a triangle by placing a line right here. Now that I've done that, I can take what I know and find the area of both these figures. If I start with my rectangle, I can use my formula area equals base times height. My rectangle has a base of 110 right here and a height of 140 right here. So I'm going to multiply 110 times 140, and when I multiply those together, I get 15,400. So my area is 15,400 centimeters squared for my rectangle. Now I need to find the area of my triangle. The first thing I need to know for my triangle is the measure of my base. So I need to know the distance from here to here. I know that the total distance from one side of this figure to the other is 180. But I also know, because of this, that the distance from here to here is 110. So to figure out what I have left, I'm going to do 180 minus 110, which gives me 70. So that means that this triangle has a base of 70 centimeters. Now I also need to find the height of this triangle, and I notice that the height does not go all the way to the top of my figure. So the height only goes from here to here. But I know that the distance from here all the way down is 140 because of this. And I also know that the distance from here to here is 50. So to figure out what I'm left with, I'm going to subtract 140 minus 50, which gives me 90. That means that this triangle has a base of 90 centimeters. Now I'm going to use that information to find the area of my triangle, and I'm using the area formula, which is 1/2 times base times height. So 1/2 times 70 times 90. When I multiply 1/2 times 70, I get 35. And now I need to multiply 35 times 90, which gives me 3,150 centimeters squared. So now I know the area of the triangle is 3,150 centimeters squared, and the area of the rectangle is 15,400 centimeters squared. So to find the total area of the composite figure, I'm going to add those two together. So 15,400 plus 3,150, which gives me a total area of 18,550 centimeters squared. For this figure, I notice that if I drop a line that goes right here, I can break this into a rectangle and a triangle. So I'm going to put a line here. And now I'm going to find the area of each of these figures. So if we start with my rectangle, I'm using my formula area equals base times height. My rectangle has a base of 10 and a height of 12. So I'm going to multiply 10 times 12 to get an area of 120 centimeters squared. Now I need to find the area of my triangle. The first thing I need to know is my base and my height. Well, I know that this measure is 10, so that means that this is also 10 centimeters. So that is the height of my triangle. Now I also need to find my base, which goes from here all the way to here. Since I know that the whole distance from one side of this figure all the way to the other is 20, but I also know that the distance from here to here is 12, to figure out what's left, I would subtract 20 minus 12 to get 8. So that means that this triangle has a base of 8. To find the area of my triangle, I'm going to use my area formula, which is 1/2 times base times height. So I'm going to multiply 1/2 times my base of 8 times my height of 10. 1/2 times 8 is 4. And then I multiply 4 times 10 and I get 40 centimeters squared. So the area of my triangle is 40 centimeters squared. To find the area of my whole figure, I'm going to add both of those together, so 120 plus 40, and I get a total area of 160 centimeters squared. For this final figure, you can see that it's already broken into pieces for you, but we just need to find the area. Now, when you look at this one, you will notice that there are actually 3 figures here instead of just 2. I'm going to use what I know about rectangles and triangles to solve this. So I'm going to start with my rectangle. I notice that my rectangle goes from here to here, and that has a measurement of 6. And then it also has a height of 4. So to find the area of my rectangle, I'm using area equals base times height, and I'm going to multiply my base of 6 times my height of 4 to get an area of 24 centimeters squared. So I know that my rectangle has an area of 24 centimeters squared. Now I need to find the area of my triangles. If I look at each triangle, I notice that this triangle has a base of 3 and a height of 4, and this triangle also has a base of 3 and a height of 4. So if I find the area of one of those, then I can put that same value for both triangles. So I'm going to use my area formula, which is 1/2 base times height, and I'm going to multiply 1/2 times my base of 3, then times my height of 4. 1/2 times 3 is 1.5, and then 1.5 times 4 gives me an area of 6 centimeters squared. So that means that this triangle has an area of 6 centimeters squared, and this triangle also has an area of 6 centimeters squared because they both had the same measurements. Now to find the total area of my composite figure, I'm going to add all 3 of these together. So I'm going to add 6 plus 24 plus 6. 6 plus 24 is 30, and 30 plus 6 is 36. So this figure has a total area of 36 square centimeters.